on conservation jobs. The session will be talking everything from the land to the sea. And I can't wait to have this conversation moderated by our very own Isaias Hernandez. Let's get into it.
Well, welcome everyone, and just a quick note as we're getting settled in, we do have career coaches that are reading resumes in that room behind, so if you are interested, feel free to pop in. We do have a lot of products like chocolate and snacks on the right side, and we have tabling organizations in the back, so if you need resources, water, we got it all, so make sure to check it out. Well, I am super excited to have this engaging panel. How many of you are looking for jobs in conservation, biodiversity work, ocean work? Okay, great, me too. Awesome. So why don't we actually get started to maybe introduce yourselves and how you got into the specific work that you're doing today.
Hi, my name is Sam Jovanovic. I'm a program manager with the Sustainable Ocean Alliance. I came into this work through developing expertise in the energy industry from my very first role in management consulting, servicing clients in the oil and gas, the utility space, precious metals mining, and was often advocating for the business case of sustainability, and just continued down the path.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Victorina. I am a Senior Resilience Manager with Greenbelt Alliance, and I kind of took the long way to my current job, but I got a bachelor's in marine biology, and I was like really set on doing like hardcore, like hard science conservation. And then turns out I didn't want to, similar to a previous panelist, turns out when you're in a lab, like things don't talk back at you. So I got bored and I wanted to expand, so I did a master's in environmental science. And I had this amazing professor who would always kind of like bring environmental justice into every single class that he taught. And that's when I really like clicked, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do anything unless it can kind of do conservation and environmental justice at the same time. But then I became a zookeeper, and then I became a teacher, and then I got this job at Greenbelt Alliance. So, you know, long way.
I love it. Hi everyone, good afternoon, good morning. My name is Dennis Mabasa, and I use they, them pronouns. I currently serve as the Vice President of Community and Youth at the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy. We're the nonprofit partner to the National Park Service in the area. And a couple things that I'm gonna highlight. We oversee a really large internship. So if you're looking for jobs within land stewardship, Arnold Palomo is the director of interns right there. Say hello to him afterward. We also oversee a really big volunteer group, about 8,000 volunteers with us every year, and then so much community engagement. We have about a team of 60 folks, and our work is to make nature accessible and connect people with the land, which is just such important work. You know, my background, also similar to you, I had a science background, and I was like, I love the earth, I'm gonna do environmental science. And I thought that's what I was gonna do. And then I was in a route where I was taking GIS classes, where you're doing like lots of mapping and lots of technical things, but I got so bored. I just couldn't be behind a computer all day, and I realized I had to be with people. And conservation, land stewardship, like, does connect. It's so relational. Like, it's relational in between people, it's relational in between humans and the earth, and it's relational like between organizations. So I think that's like the niche that I found, but it took a really long time to get there, and there was so much trial and error along the way, but really happy to be here and really be happy to be speaking with y'all and with you.
No, I absolutely love the different backgrounds that we're in, whether we were in an industry that wasn't really aligned, which I could definitely experience in that, or whether it was doing environmental science and you're like, I'm gonna do research and do conservation work, and then you're like, actually, I don't know if this is for me. And so I think there's a lot of ways that people have been developing their skill set. So my question is for like Victorina, the Greenbelt Alliance. I kind of want to learn first like what the organization does, but specifically too, like, your background experience in like education, heavy sciences, and your role, what you do today is focus on resilience and partnerships, especially with organizing communities. So I kind of want to learn more about like how those skill sets were developed over time and what you recommend for people to do that are learning all about these skills.
Yeah, for sure. For a little background, Greenbelt Alliance is a regional nonprofit. We work all around the 9 counties in the Bay Area, but kind of focus or work in these resilience hotspots, which are basically areas where there's an overlap between climate vulnerability, so already feeling the impacts of climate change, and also having social vulnerability. So we're talking about frontline communities, or people that, although climate change is universal and it will impact everyone, not everyone has the resources to prepare for it and deal with it. So that's kind of how we focus our work and our resources. What I really liked about Greenbelt Alliance is that they have a very kind of forward, I think, approach to conservation. So it's an old organization. It's like 65 plus years. And it started as like preserve open space, which is great and important, but also it's a very kind of static approach, and it doesn't always really meet the needs of everyone. And now we're kind of having this, I'd say, like more modern approach to advocacy that includes like, okay, we're going to talk about climate and conservation, but we can't do that without talking about transit and talking about housing and talking about environmental justice. And is it a lot? Yes. But it's also worth addressing all at once, because otherwise you're not really going to be successful at any one of them individually, unless you recognize that like they're connected and you're going to have to address them kind of with that connection approach. And then, okay, so as far as my job, I would say I'm kind of like a project manager. So I have a lot of different projects with a lot of different topics. It's like sea level rise, resilience hub planning, climate vulnerability assessments. So there's kind of different topic areas, and in all of them I play a project management role. So it helps to be organized. It helps to be able to meet deadlines and keep track of timelines and budgets and keep different teams on the same page and all these kind of like really glamorous things. And that's sarcasm, because it's actually not the best part of the job. But it is a very important part of the job, is to just kind of have the ability to balance all these different things at once. So if you wanted to take like a project management course, I think that will definitely help in any career that you go into. Just, getting to know yourself and getting to know what system would work best for you and how you can stay organized and how you can balance all these different things. I think that would be great. I also think relationship building is a big part of this. So being a people person helps, but also being able to hold different perspectives, being comfortable with conflict, being able to put in the time and effort to build relationships that are like founded on trust, especially when it comes to community engagement. A little bit of event planning actually doesn't hurt either. To organize communities and to make sure that they have a seat at the table and that they can actively engage with and like contribute to decision-making processes and planning processes, they have to be in the room. And if that room is like, I don't know, some like office on a Tuesday at 10 a.m., people are not going to be in that room. They have things to do. So being sure that whatever you're planning, it's in the evening. It's accessible in terms of the location, but also in terms of the language of like the people that live in that area. You're providing meals, you're providing stipends to compensate for their time, you're providing childcare so that, that single mom that has 2 jobs and only speaks Spanish, she can come and give you her opinion on like what flooding looks like in her community, because not everything is going to be solved with models. Models are great, but they also miss a lot of the nuance. So that would be another skill, like knowing how to prioritize and understand nuance. Because yes, you could have a model that shows you that flooding is going to be worse in like X area, and like maybe a decision maker would look at that and be like, okay, this is the plan that we're going to make. But then a community member would walk in the room and be like, sure, it floods there, but it floods maybe less amount of water, but over here, and this is where there's our church and our school and our senior center or whatever, like all these community assets that might not be marked as like at the most risk for flooding, let's say, for example, but that would have the biggest impact on how the community actually functions on a day-to-day basis, and like how they can be resilient to climate change. So yeah, and I would say also advocating. I think that's something that I learned over time, was that sometimes you are the youngest person in the room. Sometimes you're the only woman in the room. Sometimes you're the only, I'm originally from Venezuela and I moved to the United States in 2014. And a lot of times, especially at the beginning of my career, I was the youngest, I was the only girl, and I was the only immigrant in the room. And that always kind of like scared me a little bit, and I wouldn't like say things. And I realized you just gotta say the thing. You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be like, you know, it doesn't have to be confrontational. But if I know that in order to move this process forward in an equitable way, we need to have this partner, or we need to do things this way, I just gotta say it, and like that's okay. So just, you know, knowing that you can be a strong advocate, and a strong advocate speaks up. You, again, don't have to be rude, doesn't have to be conflicting, but you do have to show up and be like, okay, I hear you, that's great, I love where you're coming from, this is what I'm hearing from the community, and so this is what we need to do. And just like stand on that and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it however many times you need to, so that it actually gets incorporated into the planning process and it actually goes somewhere.
Yeah, I love that, because I think, you know, most of the times traditionally when you are studying a specific field or you're in this industry, you're just thinking, oh, well, I know the science, or I know this, but it's like, you know, it's so good for you to develop other skills, like people skills, networking, like how to negotiate, all these other things, because that's what really helps in your role. And especially conflict is something that like I learned at a very early age with my siblings, because I'm the youngest, so I was getting arguments with them. But like it was something where I feel like it helped develop the ways of how I navigate in work relationships. So I do think that there's always this extra dimension, especially when you're in a people-facing job. You're not in just like a specific research field and you're just only studying that. And that kind of leads to my next question to you, Dennis, is like, you know, I had the privilege to be able to tour Alcatraz with you and your team a few months ago. And I know that you all manage these very beautiful outdoor environments, but you're also creating these pathways for people. And I think I wanted to ask you, like, when you think of conservation work, right, a lot of people often think that there's this missing human dimension part, because you're just focusing on like the animals or the fungi, the flora that exists there. But you know, what you all do in your work is really focusing on all aspects. And so I kind of want to ask you, like, if you could share some of those programs and initiatives that you've done, but also those skill sets that would help people to really finding the job that they want in conservation that works for them.
I love it. Yeah. You know, so I'll take a step backwards. At the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy, we do a couple things. One of the things that we do is we make sure that our parklands are resilient to the impacts of climate change through community engagement. One of the other things that we do is we make sure the next generation of individuals are caretakers for our lands and for each other, which like is so much broader than just land stewardship. And then lastly, we also make sure that nature as a whole is accessible and equitable. And those goals can be accomplished in so many different ways, but how we do it is through community, through engaging with people, through working with people, and to making sure that there's an active pathway from elementary school to middle school to high school to college to career. Like, that's so important. And the only way to make that happen is through systems level change. You know, I have been an educator for so much of my life, and now I'm finally at a point in my career where I could work with funders, where I could work with like execs to sort of talk about like what the industry looks like as a whole and how we could make our industry more diverse. You know, oftentimes when I first came into this industry, like you were saying, like I was the lonely only in so many rooms and in so many spaces. You know, we don't want that. We never want you to be isolated. We never want anyone to be isolated within our careers, and yet the field of conservation still has so much to grow, so much room to grow. And really, like, I guess to answer your question, like, how do we make it accessible? How do we make it equitable? It's through all of us. It's through recognizing that we are all conservationists, we're all climate individuals, and we all have a special place within this work. I think that's the piece of it, like recognizing our own strength within this work and recognizing like what we could bring to the field. You know, my work has always been people-facing, has always been like, as an educator, like, I'm sure so many of you in this room have so many strengths that you could bring. Maybe you're really good at raising funds. Maybe you're really good at building the back of house infrastructure. Maybe you're really good at organizing operations, like, but conservation needs all of us and needs every single person. And I think the only way to figure out what you're good at is to just try things. You know, try something out, try an internship for 10 weeks, try to volunteer. Like, trial and error is like the best way to learn, or at least it's the best way that I learn. And I really encourage that. So yeah, that's what I'd have to say.
No, yeah, I love that, especially experimenting with new things, because I know too, when I was in undergrad, like I did like research on lizards and evolution, and I was in Miami, and I was like, honestly, this is not my life. But you know, through that experience, I learned that I didn't really want to do a conservation job in science within that specific field, but I had deep respect for all the researchers doing that.
But and you know, there's someone that loves lizards, and that's their world.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
And I love that for them.
Yeah, it's like moths, bats, everything. We need all those specialists. And now we're going deep into the sea with Sam, and I kind of wanted to ask you more about the work that Sustainable Ocean Alliance does, but also the skill sets and things that you all do to kind of empower people to get into jobs in the blue economy.
Yeah. I'll just offer a little bit of contextual information about Sustainable Ocean Alliance. So we're a non-for-profit organization whose mission is to restore the health of the ocean in our lifetime. And we do that through two primary pillars. Number one is innovation. So we invest in and support startups, including Sway, who you just heard from Alyssa earlier. So big shout out to Sway, one of our portfolio companies. And then the other side of our work is on youth empowerment, which really touches policy development and influencing policy. So I kind of work at the intersection of both. I'm a program manager, so I'll bend the term conservation job a little bit and stretch it to offer some of the skills that I see are required to step into the space, because it is emerging, it's very exciting, it's filled with people who are very passionate about the ocean. We were just in the marina doing a 7 a.m. cold plunge to cap off Climate Week, so normally I'm a little bit more put together, and there was a great whale. So it was a very, it's a community of folks who are very, very passionate about interconnection of ocean and its role in managing climate. The ocean is our planet's biggest carbon sink. Without it being healthy, much of the climate work that we're doing is a wash. So on the startup side as well as on the youth side, unsurprisingly, a lot of the skills that I recommend honing or even just being curious about: effective communication. If you're going to be writing a concept note to corral people to join your cause, that communication better be crisp. And any AI tool won't work because the human element has to come out. Campaign management is really important, and I'll stretch that term to mean when you're fundraising as a startup, corralling a fundraise is essentially a campaign. And when you're working on the policy side of things, a campaign on, for example, removing overgrown purple sea urchins, also a campaign. So these skills are cross-transferable depending on where you want to work within conservation or green jobs or blue jobs. We heard a couple of other people say like being really resourceful is really important. I think I came into the role as a mentorship program manager, and then that's quickly stretched across 5 different programs. So I get to touch a lot of different aspects, and I recommend the skill that is incredibly important, and I think I heard both of you say this too, is like learning when to be really fast and learning when to be slow. So if someone you've been trying to pin down as the speaker is getting back to you, you better jump on it, but then take your time a little bit to like be methodical about a framework that you're proposing. And so learning to like pick up the pace and slow down the pace is something that I'm constantly triangulating. So thinking about some other skills: negotiation, partnership strategy, how to build trust quickly, how to work through conflict. SF Climate Week is a big event, and so when you're a team putting something like this on, how do you quickly move past little hurdles and get to successes? Yeah, I think the skills are transferable. You just have to, I'm seeing more and more nonprofits being pushed to identify outcomes, not outputs. So what I mean by that is like, I didn't have 10 calls with prospective funders, I landed one, albeit at 10,000. So if you can think in terms of what's all required in order to get to an outcome versus an output, that might help.
Yeah, no, and I love that, because I think there's so many ways that people are developing themselves into these programs, into these initiatives. And, I kind of want to bring up an honest conversation. It's like, we look at the state of the world, a lot of young conservationists are scared that there may not be enough jobs in the sector, or will I have a living wage working in conservation, which is something that is often talked about from land to ocean. And I wanted to ask you, like, in those interview negotiations, or whether it's like, being interviewed for a conservation job, what types of values really helped you with employers to make sure that you both were a right fit for each other in the role? Because I think that's something where it's, we can all say our passion for it, but there's something that is always extraordinary that makes the interviewee end up only one person usually get the job.
I hope that question is for all of us. Okay. I'd say values alignment, and it sounds cliche, but as a prospective person joining an organization, you want to be able to come out of an interview feeling that your values are aligned and that the organization was able to articulate them. And so in conservation jobs and nonprofit jobs, green and blue jobs, we're also passionate about the mandate and the mission. It's easy to move fast, right? So just remember, how does that for you individually stack up against your own values? And I think bringing something to the table in those interviews that's truly unique at your core you, that benefits the organization. So, do some digging on their social media where you can see a bit of a white spot or a gap, where you can go, oh, I have this that they don't yet have, and I can make the case for it quickly and effectively in an interview so that you stand out.
Thank you. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think finding a place that aligns with your own values is super important, because at the end of the day, a job is a job, but also you are spending so much of your life there, and you do want to, make sure that you're working towards something that is meaningful and that you care about and that it aligns with you. So that was one of the things when I found Greenbelt Alliance, was the mission statement really called to me. It was I should know this. It's educate, advocate, and collaborate. And I was okay, those three action words, I've done all three of them and I like them. To make sure that the Bay Area's lands and people are resilient to climate change. And I was okay, bingo, got it. This is something that aligns with me. So it is a lot easier to, I guess, be confident and market yourself when it is something that you're not faking. You truly do care about this, and it does align with your values. So that's one thing. I think the other thing, just to go back to the really boring stuff, is for example, again, I can be passionate about all those things and about community engagement and about equitable access to all these things and the science and the sea level rise and all these things, right? But at the end of the day, for example, they give me a project. It is maybe funded by the state or the federal, so it's public dollars, and maybe it's $500,000, and we have all these things. So if a candidate shows up and they know everything about the science and they care about the people, but they can't stay on task and like communicate effectively with their team members and be able to have all those kind of like silly, boring, but important project management skills, then like, unfortunately, that's a huge part of it. Like we all have these kind of like administrative responsibilities that you have to do in the back end, and like a candidate could be literally amazing, but if at the end of the day, like they can't carry the project forward, then they're not the best candidate. But if we have another candidate who does have all those skills and maybe is not like super duper knowledgeable, that's something they can learn. That's something they can learn on the job. But we just have to be careful. We have limited resources. A lot of it is public money, and with public money comes a lot of responsibility of making sure you're responsible and you report well and you meet all these kind of little constraints. So making sure that you have the soft skills, or like, I don't know, the boring admin stuff, I'm sorry, but you gotta learn it. It's an unfortunate reality, but I think it will make you a lot more competitive compared to other people that are just as passionate as you, but maybe they just didn't have that little extra thing.
I'm loving everything that they said. You know, I totally agree, like values alignment, skills alignment, selling yourself, being confident about the work. You know, the thing that I'll share, working in environmental nonprofits, it's clear that our systems were built with historic inequities. You know, in my role right now, when I applied for the job, I never thought I was gonna get it. I am way younger than all other vice presidents, like working in the National Park Service. Like, I never saw somebody like myself working in this field. And I think what's important is like, how do we navigate that system and use it to our advantage? And what I mean by that is like, oftentimes in these like archaic systems, like power and power dynamics is a thing that's really valued. And when I was applying, and what I mean by that is when I was applying for this job, I was like, okay, I am not gonna try to be independent. I'm gonna ask for help for so many people. And I literally like reached out to every mentor I've ever had. I reached out to every former boss. I reached out to the Dean of Education at the Cal Academy of Sciences where I used to work. And she was like 5 bosses above me. And I was like, you remember me? We were in that meeting once together. Like, I need your help. And I went on LinkedIn and I stalked everybody in the organization. I was like, who can I get to speak on my behalf? And I asked folks to leverage their power to support me. And I think that at any level, I think is gonna be so valuable if you wanna get into conservation. I think it's not the only way, but it can be a way that we could work together. You know, I think a lot of the solutions that I think about are through community, and it's through reaching out with each other. And I want to offer, like, if you have an internship, or if you have a boss, or like someone within your organization that you might not even know, like 4 years down the road, reach out to them. They want to help you. You know, your old professors, they want to help you. So like, I think that's one thing that I'll share with y'all of like how to get into the industry. Ask for help and have folks leverage their power to share a little bit with you.
Yeah, that was such rich knowledge, Dennis, that you just shared, because I think that a lot of people, whether whatever junior role, senior role, intro role, you may think that you're not qualified enough for the role, but then you're like, actually, like the worst thing they could say is no.
Totally,
but at least I tried, and that's something where I feel like all of us here, it's like, yes, we're tired of submitting hundreds of applications, but it's like, you only need one person to invest in you, and it's on there for that. So thank you so much for each and every one of you for being on this panel, and for our attendees. Please connect with our panelists. We have a lot of internship opportunities and other ways to get involved. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Please
you.
give a round of applause.